Hi, this is Dr. Hudson. This presentation is designed to help you master the historical thinking skill, identifying continuity and change. Here I've listed the 6 historical thinking skills that we'll focus on in this course. This helps you put this particular skill in a broader context. Have you ever found history overwhelming? Simply too much stuff? After all, as noted earlier, the past is everything that has ever happened to everyone, everywhere. Do you find yourself thinking of history as a list of all that stuff? It seems there's a never-ending list of prominent people, presidents and founding fathers, and then there are all those important events: discovering America, the Revolutionary War, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution, and then all the prominent places that you have to remember. And worst of all, the dates. Perhaps you've imagined history as a list of events in chronological order, since we can easily find them presented that way. I hope to persuade you that this is a common misunderstanding of history. This is a section division. When you reach a slide like this, the presentation will automatically stop, and you decide if you want to continue with the new section, which is titled, or if you prefer to go back and review the previous section. The central question for this skill is, how do we understand the complexity of the past? By identifying continuity and change, one of the 6 historical thinking skills that you will develop and demonstrate in this course. We have already established that the past is too vast to know. Thus, history is the effort to make sense of the past and explain how and why things change over time. Rather than listing a series of events from one event in the past to another, history is created by identifying relationships between these events. So, identifying continuity and change is a method of assessing the relationship of events to each other. So, identifying continuity and change is what we want to do, and listing only serves the purpose of working on your memorization skills and cramming your short-term memory. One ubiquitous expression of continuity and change is periodization, organizing the past into periods or eras. A period or an era is a time of continuity. Significant change is referred to as a turning point. So the pattern is era, turning point, era. Periodization, however, only makes sense in retrospect, since many of the labels used would not have made sense to contemporaries. Obviously, no one ever knew they were living in an antebellum era, since that means before the war. Nor could people in 1916 know that they were participating in the First World War, since there needed to be a Second World War for that to make sense. Thus, these periods of history that we frequently reference actually reveal an interpretation of continuity and change. This section defines the skill basics. All historical thinking skills involve asking questions. Identifying continuity and change requires asking questions that will help you compare and evaluate. When identifying continuity and change, ask questions that compare. Comparison is necessary to determine continuity and change. One approach is to compare some point in the past to the present. The example here is comparing the economy of the Great Depression in the 1930s to the economy of today. Another approach is comparing 2 points in the past to each other. So the example here is also with the economy, but it's comparing the economy of the early Gilded Age with the economy of the Jazz Age in the 1920s. The next skill builds upon the comparison. Evaluation is necessary to determine continuity and/or change in the times being compared. A standard analytical frame for evaluating change over time is progress and decline. For example, in American history, we ask, has democracy increased since the 1790s when the Constitution was written? Have civil rights been expanded to larger groups of people between 1920 and 1980? Have individual liberties declined over the 20th century? Each of these questions is evaluating the progress or decline of change. Asking questions that compare and evaluate requires judgment and support. Defining the periods of continuity and the turning points of change are interpretations and reflect particular emphasis. For example, periodization by presidential administrations would be emphasizing political history. Turning points are frequently argued. Some might insist that the turning point in America's commitment to Vietnam came with the Tet Offensive in January of '68, while someone else would argue it was Nixon's election in November of that year. Therefore, evidence and sound reasoning are essential. All interpretations and opinions are not created equally. Some are better than others. This section adds complexity to the skill basics. The skill basics can mislead you a little bit, suggesting that continuity and change are simple and move in one direction, as though it's all decline or all progress. So to add complexity, I want to emphasize that change is uneven. So not all components in a society will change together. For example, economic opportunities may change while cultural ideas about appropriate gender roles may remain constant. This uneven pace of change will create conflict. Change can also move in different directions in the same time period. Change can bring progress to one group of people and decline to another group. For example, a change such as a rise in interest rates could help those saving money and hurt those borrowing money. Segregation laws that excluded African Americans from professional employment benefited white Southerners. So when evaluating progress and decline, always consider the question, from whose perspective? This section offers a concluding mantra. Always remember, history is not learning facts. Historical thinking, in this case, identifying continuity and change, requires that you think, that you ask questions, that you make judgments that require reasoning, and that you explain those judgments. Yet, historical thinking is not simply issuing opinions, which are personal preferences, but historical thinking leads to interpretations. Interpretations that reflect a point of view that can be challenged and disputed. History is controversial.